What is your favourite proverb or one line of wisdom? This can be something you have read from the Bible, something you have learnt from living life. It could be something like Rome wasn't built in a day, or out of sight, out of mind, or the wicked run away when no one is chasing them, but the godly are as bold as lions. Whatever your favourite proverb is, I'm sure it speaks in a similar way to the majority of other proverbs. When we read biblical proverbs, there is a pattern that emerges. If you are godly, righteous, or live well, then you are rewarded. And if you mess up or do evil, you will be punished. This can make quite a lot of sense to us, in all honesty. We can agree in a way to the karma-like pattern these proverbs can speak of. In biblical study, this is known as classical wisdom. However, when we come to the book of Job, another of the Bible's wisdom books, this way of thinking is challenged, and we see a totally different pattern emerge. Job was someone who did the right things, didn't do anything to harm another, and had a firm faith in God. Yet, as a result of a conversation involving the Satan, the accuser, Job has everything taken away from him, and his health majorly affected. You can read about this in chapters 1 and 2 of the book of Job. This book challenges the pattern of the classical wisdom of Proverbs to show us that sometimes life doesn't work in a do good and good things will come, or do bad and bad things will happen kind of way. Life is much more complex. In all honesty, reading the book of Job is hard work and can really hit us emotionally as we see a man who has lost everything and is completely broken, being constantly and falsely accused of doing wrong things by his so-called friends. You might be wondering why on earth we're looking at this passage now as we draw towards the conclusion of Lent, or even at all. But as I've read the book again, I feel like there is something exciting about this as we prepare for Easter. The context of this particular passage that we're focusing on today, Job chapter 6 verses 1 to 10 and 28 to 30, is part of Job's second speech that he gives while in conversation with his 4 friends. He has just cursed the day he was born in Job chapter 3 and starts to speak of his innocence. Job defends his right to complain as his questions and needs haven't been satisfied, similarly to how an animal will complain when there is no food, in verses 5 and 6. It is important when reading this passage that we keep in mind Job's suffering and brokenness at the forefront of our minds. Some of what he says is hastily said from a place of hurt, but that should never diminish the importance of his state of being in that moment. Throughout the passage and the book as a whole, we see the ideas of classical wisdom come into conflict with the reality of life. This doesn't mean we discount one or the other, but try and find a balance between them. According to the wisdom of Proverbs, Job is an impossible case. He declares himself innocent in verse 29 of chapter 6, and this is backed up by the narrator in chapter 1 verse 1, and also by God in chapter 1 verse 8. Yet Job finds himself in a place of complete and utter suffering where he is wanting God to crush him, chapter 6 verse 9, because he hasn't got the strength to go on. And it is in this conflict that can open a door that can get quite exciting for us. We see through the life of Job that the karma-like pattern of life we can easily accept as true is too simple for the complexity of life here on earth. I'm sure we can all think of situations where good people have had it hard and bad people have had it good. It doesn't seem fair. And this can leave us in a place of doubting justice at all. In our student Bible study at the moment, we're looking at the themes of grace found in the musical of Les Miserables by exploring several of the characters we encounter. This week, we explored the story of Javert, a police officer who chases the main character Jean Valjean throughout the narrative to allow justice for past crimes to be carried out. Yet, when Valjean spares the life of Javert, and this is kind and caring towards him, showing a transformation of character from the last time he was imprisoned, Javert's entire way of seeing the world crumbles, and it leads him to commit suicide. This can be similar to when we see real moments of injustice in the world today. Job was a blameless man, yet he had all the bad things life could throw at him happen. We never get a resolution as to why this happens either. This can lead us to have our view of justice completely change and lead us to crumble like Javert, or extend our perspective and understanding of the justice of God. As we lead up to Easter, in Jesus we see a man who is blameless, yet he went through absolute agony and torture, the absolutely most painful, elongated and humiliating way to die humanly devised. Jesus didn't deserve to have that happen to him, yet he willingly embraced it. In the eyes of the karma, like classical wisdom view alone, Jesus should have had an easy life with lots of provision from God. Yet he didn't have a place to lay his head, seen in Luke chapter 9 verse 58, and died a public death of a criminal after being tortured beforehand. If we're honest, Jesus didn't deserve this any more than Job deserved what happened to him. However, through the possibility of people getting what they don't deserve, in Jesus dying in the way he did, we can receive what we do not deserve. An offer of love to a fullness of life that goes beyond what we can imagine. The whole nature of Christianity relies on the idea that the life received from God through the death and resurrection of Jesus is not something we deserve or can earn. Therefore, what we see in the injustice of Job's suffering is similar to an injustice we receive to the life that we have been given. We have an offer to extend our understanding of God's justice, to go beyond an oversimplistic view of good actions getting good rewards. This doesn't mean that we should stop in our fight against tackling injustices in the world, fighting discrimination of any kind and other actions that devalue another person should never be accepted or normalised. However, we can be invited into a place where we go beyond a human understanding of justice to begin to know God's justice, which is radically generous, full of love, and far beyond whatever we will truly know. Long before Jesus was on earth, God introduced how he wanted to introduce grace into how he does things. When God speaks to Job's friends at the end of the book, God promises, "I will not treat you as you deserve," if they are obedient to God's instructions. This revelation is something that can fill us with a love that sustains us and a trust that God knows what he is doing, despite what we may be facing. This week marks the 1-year anniversary of the first lockdown due to COVID. This pandemic was not brought on by God and is something that has caused a lot of hurt to many people. The story of Job helps us to know that God listens to us when we suffer, what life throws at us. And we are invited into a trust that God knows what God is doing, knowing that one day the suffering we see in this life will be no more. This week, how can you try and go beyond the oversimplistic view of of karma-like classical wisdom to embrace a fullness of God's action, love, and care? Will you be someone who, rather than accusing people of wrongdoing, like Job's friends, to find answers to suffering, will love, support, and comfort those who are suffering? Are you sometimes too attached to the human understanding of doing good will bring good rewards and doing bad brings bad rewards, that we miss out on the offer of love and life from God that is beyond anything we deserve?